Good evening and welcome back to Unchained. This is night 8. My name is Joe Nesbitt.
And I'm Trisha Nesbitt.
And we are delighted that you're back. Thank you for joining us again for night 8, 8 Nights of Hope. Friends, we are delighted to be partnering with Pastor Richie Halverson to have our guests live here each evening. And we know that tonight you'll be blessed as you have been the previous 7 nights. A couple of things about housekeeping as we're starting. If you're just tuning in and you haven't registered yet, we would love for you to take a moment and text the word register to the number on your screen. What that does, it puts you in the drawing for Pastor Richie Halverson's book that each night at the very end of the show, we reveal who that winner is. So if you haven't done so, please consider registering for that. Anything else? I think that's about it, right?
Friends, I've been really enjoying everything. How about you?
That's good. Friends, we have
great.
been enjoying it because we've had some of the most amazing guests, and tonight is no different. we have an incredible guest. Tonight's guest is Anne-Marie Dunbar. Anne-Marie, thank you for being here. So we're going to ask her some questions. Go ahead.
It's my pleasure.
It's our pleasure, too.
But before we do anything, can I read 3?
Before we do anything, Anne-Marie would love to read something. You go right ahead.
This evening is very special. Being here with Pastor Joe and Pastor Trish. I'm grateful that they asked me to share. Whomever is listening, I hope that there's hope to be shared. I want to read Psalms 34, verse 18. It says, "My soul shall make her boast in the Lord. The humble shall hear thereof and be glad. O magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears."
Boy, isn't that that is a perfect text. Because we know that Pastor Richie's been talking to us every single night about the fact that the Lord does hear. He surrounds us with people that can see us through these valleys, as well as walking through them with us himself.
Amen.
So that's a really good text to start with.
It is, and it's beautiful, Anne-Marie, because you shared, before we were sharing tonight, you shared with us some of your journey and how you found that your hope is the Lord's. And so that's really very appropriate. Thank you for sharing
Well,
that.
the Holy Spirit gave that to me this morning because I was trying to spend the day in the Lord preparing for this moment, because when you do things for God, you just can't just randomly.
It
Just
does
do
help
things.
sometimes to feel like, hey, I know exactly where this is going. So
Sometimes we don't in life.
sometimes we don't. And that's kind of what all of these nights are about, isn't it? Especially when we don't know where it's going. And we have to find our way out of that unknown to the known.
Life is like that, though.
It
you
is.
know? Life is like that. And it's just so amazing when we find God. It's like, some people say Pandora's box.
You open it up and you...
And you open it up and it's like, wow, where have I been? Where have you been? He's not been anywhere. Is where I've been.
That's right.
Speaking
Can
of,
I... Go ahead.
Okay. You go ahead.
All right. Can we use that as a springboard to your journey? Because sometimes in life, it is about us not having any clue where we are, even though we come to find out later on he was right there with us.
All
So
the
can we
time.
jump back in your life? Pastor Richie's going to talk to us tonight about what it means to persevere, what it means to not be at the end of our journey yet, but to step by step persist in heading that direction. Can you share with us some of your journey, where you were, how you came to that moment of realization, like, oh, wait, I'm not by myself. And then we'll both have some questions for you about the journey from that point forward.
Well, really, in essence, if you really think about it, after you get to that point of knowing who God is, all our stories are in the Bible. Every one of us has a story. And that's why when people say they don't know why, or who wrote the Bible, man wrote the Bible, a man wrote the Bible. Well, if you really get into God and you really understand God, and you look at where my life started as a child coming up, and I was raised in the Catholic Church. I wasn't the most obedient child, and I think my childhood was probably based on when Jesus was there were the people trying to bring the children to Jesus, and the disciples were saying, "No, he doesn't have time. He doesn't have time." Well, I think those children were the children like me,
Okay.
who they just couldn't have control of, or they wanted to be independent, and they were curious, and the parents didn't know. They were like, do as you're told, be quiet, sit down, be quiet, do as you're told. And Jesus has room for that child that wants to search and wants to find out and wants to ask questions and so on. And some of us, all of us belong to God, but not everybody's chosen.
We
So
don't all
how-
realize it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
please.
so Emery, let's go back to the beginning of where we were talking about when you were, a young girl and you were trying to feel, find a way through your circumstances. So,
Yes,
yes.
I was a child who I was born out of wedlock, and there are all sorts of ramifications when people are not feeling good about themselves and raising children, and we don't realize that children they're like sponges,
Hmm.
and we absorb everything that's around us. And the hurt and pain that our parents go through, they don't realize that it's transferred over into us. And then I was born in Trinidad, and I came from a pretty affluent family, um, in their simplicity, and my aunt and my uncle raised me. Then there was a time when I was 11, my parents were migrating to go to Canada, and I had to go.
Hmm.
And my aunt begged my mom to leave me there to finish my education because there's a test like they have here called the FCAT or whatever it is. You got to sit the FCAT to proceed on to college or university, whatever.
And the more stability
And
you have leading up to it, the greater chance you have at doing well.
right, and we had something like that in the islands. It's called the common entrance exam or the 11 plus, whatever you want to, However, there was some titles for it. Anyway, I came first in the country for the thing, but we had already left and migrated to Canada, and my aunt asked for me to come back and let me finish my education there, and my mother wouldn't. She wouldn't allow it. This is the first time I'm actually living in a home with my mom, my stepdad, and my sister.
There's some
I mean,
stability.
I knew we were a family, but we never lived like a family before. So this is my first time living like a family, and we're in a strange country with a different culture, totally altogether. So here I am trying to fit in and trying to belong in the new atmosphere that I've been given, and I've always been curious and very independent, and well, suffice it to say, as a teenager growing up, coming into my teens, things weren't very pretty sometimes.
Hmm.
My mom she wasn't a huggy, lovey kind of person. She bought you things and she provided food and she provided a roof over your head kind of thing. That was love. And I always wondered, why was I always looking for that hug, or why was I always quick to, shed a tear, and why weren't they like that? And but of course I went ways with I was trying to fit in with my friends, and some of them were smoking cigarettes, and I was caught on the corner in the little park trying to smoke cigarettes with my friends, and boy did I get in trouble. And the trouble that I would get in, there was no grace and mercy.
Hmm.
There was no grace and mercy.
So
It
no
was it was a
understanding.
no, and it was a great disappointment. You were a disappointment. You felt being you I always felt like I was a disappointment to everybody all the time. So
Hmm.
therefore I didn't
Wow.
care.
Right.
I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
I cared but I didn't care.
If I'm always that way, I might as
Yeah,
well.
it just didn't matter. And so I struggled. I struggled at home. I struggled at school. Here was this brilliant student who all of a sudden is struggling because I was more advanced,
Hmm.
and I probably had ADHD that nobody understood back then. And so therefore I have a mind that needs to be challenged at all times. And so I started challenging my own self, but going in a different direction, not in the direction my parents want me to go. So I ended up leaving home at 17, not having a grade 10 education, not even, because I didn't even finish grade 10 when I left. Because they think they put me back because when I came here, there was an age and your school and all different things. So anyway, long story short, um, I went out on my own, and again there was disappointments. I had got my mom was help. She helped me to get a a room at a rooming house and a job and stuff like that. And then something happened there, and she again never. She didn't trust me and didn't not that not that I kind of blamed her. I was always getting into something, you know. So but at that time I didn't think of it that way. It was like, why can't I be forgiven sometimes? Why can't
Mm.
why can't you forgive me sometimes? So I just left and went on my own, and you follow that road, and you meet people, and you go to the clubs, and the clubs are there, and it's partying, and I love to dance. I was never a drinker, so I'd nurse a Coke all night, but I'd be on the dance floor all night, and I did that well, by the way, and so much so that sometimes there'd be a little show, and everybody gather around. Oh, Amory, and I had a friend. His name was Ronnie Coleman. I never forget him, and he we weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, but as soon as we saw each other, that was the dance thing, and it was on. It was like sliding over the shoulder and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But anyway, um, yeah. So that was my life, and then, of course, in the club scene, there's drugs, there's all sorts of stuff going on, and you be part of that. And then the next thing you know, I've met somebody else. I wanted to be, I want to get into movies. I'm gone to Las Vegas. At that time, there you don't need any passports or anything like that. It was free range to fly between Canada and the United States. And situations put me in choices, I should say, put me in compromising situations that I wasn't mentally prepared for.
Okay.
But it was like all of a sudden, I want to say it's like the goldfish and was thrown in the pond with all the sharks. And it's like sink or swim.
Right.
And some of the choices that I made could have been very detrimental for me. And then when I'm talking to friends and trying to explain that, well, this happened, and oh my gosh, when I look back, that could have happened, but I felt like it was a magic carpet that took me and swooped me away. At that time, I didn't realize I was talking about the Lord.
So can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
So I'm hearing you describe Trinidad to Canada, Canada to On My Own, and the whole time it's almost like you continue to move, continually seeking, but not finding.
No.
There's a hunger for something different.
Yes, and I want to say it's looking for love in all the wrong places. And that's what I summed it up as getting to be an adult. You want to belong, you want to be loved, you want to be accepted. You want that peace
I've
that
landed,
no one
I've
can
arrived.
yes, that no one can give you. But I didn't realize that no one could give it to me.
Okay.
I kept looking for someone to give it to me. And constantly ending up in that cavern, that place that
This
who you-
isn't it.
yes,
Whatever I just
yes,
did or tried.
yes, yes. And in my journeys of making mistakes and causing harm to myself in a lot of ways, I ended up making a decision through my mother. Actually, I wanted to go home. I realized I'd made mistakes and I wanted to go home. And I called, and I said, I want to come home. And it was a tough love situation. I'm sure parents go through that tough love thing. And that's why people say right now that I spoil my grandchildren, especially my one grandson, because I remembered what that tough love did to me.
Okay.
And I can just only hope that my character that I have now, my loving kindness, my unconditional love will eventually penetrate whatever it is teenagers are going through or young people are going through, that would penetrate, that they could see a good person, love, and understanding. Because at that time, I really needed that and I didn't get it. So I had an abortion. But I couldn't get the money to go home because I was told, you make your bed, you lie in it. But when I got pregnant and I called home, I said, immediately I knew the tone and the voice, that I knew that it wasn't going to be something I could do. So I immediately said, it's legal here to have an abortion. Then because I was hoping, she said, just come home.
Right. The door's open.
But she didn't. She said, how much does it cost? And I said, $500.
Wow.
She said, I'll send it to you. And some people took me in that I didn't, know, but a friend of mine and their mom took me in. And that caused me never to be able to have children. Thank you. Never to have children. So that's another journey But anyhow, long story short, I met an older gentleman, long time in my journeys, and he was from Canada also, and he used to say to me, he says, "You need to go home." He was like a kind of like an uncle. So whenever he came to town, he always treated me with respect, and that was somebody I trusted. So when I finally did get back home to Canada after calling my aunt, and I found her, and my other aunt was the head of the consulate for Trinidad and Tobago. She was the consulate general for Trinidad and Tobago. And I came, like I said, I came from a simple but affluent family. My uncle that raised me with my aunt. He was, uh, he was like what you call head of national security here.
Okay.
He was that in Trinidad. And my aunt was a school teacher, and my cousins, I grew up with them, and I loved them, and they loved me.
So if I'm understanding correctly, after talking with mom says, "Hey, you make your bed, you lay in it," but you find your way back to Canada, back home with relatives.
Yes, but before that, the journey that I was going through there, I was going to the church because I really wasn't going to church, but I was looking for God. I was looking for Him. And I went to the church and I would light candles because that's what Catholics do.
Sure.
We light candles. And I would kneel in the church. There was no service going on because the Catholic church, the doors are open all the time. Everybody goes in whenever. And I would go in there from time to time and I would cry and I would say to God, "Why don't you just take me? Why don't you just take me? Like, why are you keeping me here? What are you keeping me here for?"
Right.
You know, I grew up to know that you're in control, so just take me. And I joined friends with, because I just felt like the Catholic Church was in the place that had what I was looking for. And then I had other friends they were in the Japanese religion, Namyo what they chanted and stuff like that, and I tried that, and I didn't feel like it just wasn't there.
Sure.
And so I would go back and back, and then I left and I went back to Canada, and all the things that I was doing then, it was like it just never happened. I went back and it's like I left it there, and I'm talking about drugs and drinking and stuff like that because at that point in time now I started to drink, because before when I first started to go out and I was younger, I didn't do that, but then now I was starting to drink, not like alcoholic, but when you go out to the club you drink,
Social.
yeah,
So a new
and
environment is letting you do something different.
yeah, so now I go over here and I go back over there and it's like the people, the surroundings are not there anymore. And I just left it. And people talk about, oh, there's an addiction and there's this and that and the other. And I was looking for the addiction.
Right.
It wasn't there. Someone had taken it from me.
How do you go from the place you're describing, where you've been trying to fill a place with different experiences, and you've said this isn't it and that's not it. Where do you turn a corner there where you say this is what I've been looking for?
Not yet. When I went back home, I called my friend, like my uncle, and I said, "I finally came back. I'm in Toronto." He lived out in Vancouver, and I'm part Oriental, and so is he. So anyway, so he says, "I'm so happy." He was so excited. Good for you, blah, whatever. So a couple of months later, he contacts me again, and he says, "I'm planning this cruise to go on this cruise, and I want to take you with me."
Wow.
I says, "What cruise?" I've never been on a cruise before. What are you talking about, a ship? What? I was young. I was 24, going on 25. And he did. He planned the cruise and everything like that. And it was a biblical cruise. He says, "I want to take you on a biblical cruise." And I said, wow. Like I've always loved God. My grandmother said when I was born, I was one of a twin. My brother died. But she said at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Sabbath morning, 6 o'clock Sabbath morning, I came out screaming. The church bells were ringing because the Catholic church is just around the corner from our house, and dong, dong, dong. And everybody knows at 6 o'clock in the morning, there's no bright lights anywhere. Dawn is just breaking.
Right.
And she said this bright light came on in the room that almost blinded the midwife because I was being born at home.
Sure.
And so she said that story when I was younger. Then when I was on this cruise,
So this
that-
is like a Holy Lands tour.
yes,
Okay.
like more than ever anything. Well, they didn't call it a Holy Land by that time, but we went to Greece and boarded in Piraeus, and when we boarded in Piraeus, we went to Crete and Delos. We went to the Rock of Delos. We went to Corinth. We went to Mykonos.
Oh.
Went to well, we stopped at Delos, and that's like where the Zeus, the temple of Zeus is. We
Okay.
went to Turkey. We went to Istanbul, but we went to Izmir in Turkey.
the
We went
Bosphorus.
to where Cleopatra and Anthony had walked down to the water. You know, we went and I learned so many things, and I could see so many things coming. And then we went to Egypt, and we saw the pyramids, and all these things were coming. They were like where Jesus walked, because when I was a child, my grandmother used to buy Bible story books to me, and one of the my favorite was Moses. I slept with him under my pillow. I know everything about Moses. I know, when I say everything, I know everything about Moses. I loved Moses. I loved his character. And when I visited all these places, I even have a picture with me overlooking where Daniel and the lion's den is, overlooking over Jerusalem. And
So it sounds like in this tour you were getting like sort of some grounding that you hadn't had before.
yes,
and if you were getting pieces from your past, like when you were young, and now you were actually, getting some sense of God
I
again
was
in your life.
crying. I was crying. I just couldn't believe that I was walking where Jesus walked. My footsteps were where he walked. They had built the Catholics had built a church over where they had crucified him, and they have a church, and then they have where he fell. They made stations of the cross, going along the way. And here I was walking where the Jesus that I knew about, and the tears just couldn't stop rolling. And I went to Bethlehem where he was born in the manger, and I had to go down because they made the doors all smaller, because you could see where the doors were, but the soldiers used to ride into the church, so they made the doors smaller. So they had to bow down
Right.
to get into where he was born. And while there, I just knew that just God had touched me.
So this is a different feeling than everything before this.
Yes.
Everything before has been trying to fill this void. I'm going to fill this with something, and you're saying you get there, but something else is happening in here.
But I wasn't quite there yet either. So the journey went on, and I went back home, and I opened a restaurant and all that sort of stuff, and with my boyfriend at the time, and then he didn't want to be there anymore. But, suffice it to say, I did something really good, because I had a thought, and I had a vision, and I brought the vision to fruition, because if you Google it, you can see the Roti Hut. It's still there 42 years later.
Okay.
It's still open. They've now expanded and made it bigger, the people I sold it to.
Wow.
And a lot of people can't say that.
Right.
A lot of people have opened things and they've closed or whatever.
A lot of people don't get beyond the thought. They don't take the steps to the implementation.
Right. But that was all God. That was all God's making. I mean, because I didn't know what I was doing. I started doing everything backwards. I got the building first because it was a great price. It was $500 a month rent. But anyway, suffice it to say, all this was God in the making. God in the making, molding me and fashioning me. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I was still
So you didn't
hunting.
know that God had a vision for your life.
no.
Yeah.
no,
So you were
no.
looking for like belonging and fitting, and like you said, even before we came on set, you were saying you were looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yes.
And now you're getting this experience of the sense of God in your life. You're getting this
Well,
transformational.
now I'm feeling like I'm worth something because I've done something.
Wow.
I've created something. So and it was the second West Indian restaurant in the whole of Ontario,
Wow.
and they didn't even have any in Montreal, Quebec, or anything. That was the
Pioneering.
yes, and to me that was mine. I
Right.
owned it. I owned that,
Right.
and that's something I'm trying to help my grandchildren do. You've got to help them to get something to own so that they feel good about them.
Right.
I own this. My
Mm.
one grandson right now, he's learning to build house, like take houses apart
Mm.
and I want him to learn every aspect of it because I want him to own that. When you own something, it makes you feel like another person. You feel important to yourself. You feel good about yourself.
Absolutely.
Because those insecurities is what take you to the levels of sometimes you feel of no return.
The
But somewhere,
insecurities will stop
yes,
you. The insecurities will end you.
and you don't realize that if it's somebody that comes along or God comes along, you don't know what it is.
Right.
But that drive for me, I just kept going and going. And I went to Trinidad and then I came back. And when I came back, I was on another level. And now I was looking for God. Now I was really,
So you're realizing what you're looking for.
yes, I knew I was looking for God. I
Mm.
knew I was looking for him. But I lived with I moved from my mom's now to live with my grandma. Because my grandma and I were like one. And I loved her dearly. But she had a friend who lived in her building. And have you ever felt like have you ever hit rock bottom?
Hmm.
Okay. So I was at rock bottom, and her friend came. Life just was not treating me the right because of decisions and choices that I made. I couldn't blame anybody else. It was choices that I was making. And this lady, I never forget her, Miss Veronica Gonzalez. She was from Guyana. She was my grandma's friend. She was so sweet. And I came and I met her. And they were very friendly. And she was always helping my grandma to do stuff, before I came along. And she had a daughter. The daughter, very high functioning, but just slightly something wasn't perfect, But none of us are perfect.
Sure.
Anyhow, we became friendly and she needed a friend and she kind of looked up to me because I was older than her. And so they invited me to go to church. Now, mind you, I'd gone to different churches looking for God. I was looking for him. I'd
Yeah.
started looking for him from Las Vegas and I just kept on doing it, looking in different places. But this particular church I went to, I felt like I belonged.
Hmm.
I felt when they did the altar call, I felt like this is it.
Hmm.
This is it.
It's personal.
Yes, it was very personal. And then I thought about it, and it was but the enemy when he sees you there, he has to fight for you. But there was too many things to give up to follow God. You know the part where they say about the rich man. It's easier for the camel to go through. Yes, I can see why because it was hard for me to give up a lot of things. I'm used to going out. The 10 Commandments are given to me. What do you mean? What? I didn't know anything about those 10 Commandments. They didn't have that in the
Beauty of the
Catholic Church.
covenantal relationship
Yeah,
between
so no,
you and a personal Savior.
but there were so many things I had to give up. I smoked cigarettes. I would go out with my friends, drink. But then curiosity got the better of me. I love history. I love history. I love listening to where, what, how, when, why. And a pastor came to town with an evangelical series. And I was curious. I wanted to know about this book of Revelation. And then we started talking about, different aspects of, I come from worshiping on a Sunday and different things, etc. I come from that. So I'm like, what is all this about? So I want to know.
So it's really beautiful, Anne-Marie, your story and how you always had this longing. You always had this hunger because you knew that something was missing, and you intuitively knew, but yet you were on that journey of searching and finding yourself in, like you said, you were looking for love in the wrong places, and you were trying to fill that soul hunger. And but what kept you persistent was this vision that you had, that you wanted to, this underlying vision that was pulling you towards seeking God. And so once
Yes.
you finally came to a place of where people actually were accepting you and where you felt a place of belonging, then it sort of sounds like it came together.
Yes, I opened up. It was like,
Mm.
it's like that flower that you like, one of these flowers, kind of starts to open up a little bit.
It's
Not
safe.
not everything. Yes, it's
Right.
you're in water. You're in water, and yes,
Blooming.
you're safe
Yes.
to open a little, because people are accepting you because you don't have to be perfect anymore. You don't have to be that perfect person that everybody else is. Everybody else who's not perfect looking at you to be perfect, and you're thinking that you should be perfect, but in the interim of all that, none of them are perfect. Because
Right.
guess what I've learned?
Mm.
Everyone's got a closet.
Right.
So not what's on the surface is what was really mattering, but it was what was beyond, what was the
Inside,
inside, yeah,
yes,
that God could
yes,
see. And you had a lot of rejection, in your story, and
yes,
you were
yes.
really, and abandonment in some ways, so being able to feel a sense of belonging and feeling a sense of being able to come to God
I'm
and
not,
let
yeah,
things go.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna say exactly everything, but I have, I took care of this young man. You all didn't get the pleasure to meet him. But oh my gosh, that was just like kissing the face of God. He was the best. He was my boy. But anyway, his mom and dad, they're just awesome people. And something happened to me a long time ago. I'm not going to get into the story. But the job that I'm in now, 17 years ago, a situation came and happened. And I had to step, because you have to be fingerprinted and everything like that. And I had to step away from that job because I needed to get a discernment for whatever the situation was.
Sure.
And I had to take this story to his mom and dad.
Mm.
That was the worst moment for me in my entire life at that time. And when I went to them with the story, they held me and they hugged me.
To share something with them.
But yes, I had to tell them because I couldn't take care of their son for a few weeks, and I had to tell them why. And they held me and they held me and they held me. And they said, "You're an awesome person. And whatever happened a long, long time ago, at 19, don't you even worry about it." And to today, we lost him a couple of years ago, my boy. That was that. I thought that feeling was the worst feeling. That was the worst feeling. But to today, these people still treat me like I belong to them, even though I don't take care. That's what Christianity is about. That's what it's about. And that's the belonging, and that's what I've always needed and I've always
That's a
wanted.
foundation
Yeah.
Yes.
that doesn't move.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like, experiencing the heart of God.
Yes.
And that's what I love about you, Anne-Marie, and that we love about you, and so many of us too, is just that you have such a heart for other people. And we had
You
actually
have
one
to.
person that was going to come join us in the set tonight, and he had just come to church a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "Oh, I love Anne-Marie because
Oh,
you're
hey,
so
Sue.
no, yeah." So well, yeah. So and a couple other people that had different people that have come at different times, and so we we love you, and we just love your compassionate heart, Anne-Marie, and we can understand now more of why your heart is so filled with God's love and compassion. It's because of you seeing the heart of God and then being that heart to others. So it's beautiful.
And I
It's very
don't know
beautiful.
why he's chosen me to be so special with me, because it's like I just feel him. Sometimes I could just feel him in my. I've two things that have happened to me. He has come to me twice. As I'm sitting here talking to you, I've closed my eyes and I'm praying, and the vision just as clear as day. And the first time it happened, I wondered, why did you do that to me? It was a lady who was in our church. She was an elder, and she went into dementia on the pulpit. But she didn't want to come to anybody else's house. They all shooed me away, and I went home, because if I ate a piece of watermelon, she had half, I had half.
Right. Sister.
and she loved my little grandson. She was old, she was the elder. And when it happened, I freaked out, but I went home. But for whatever reason, she told her daughter when she came for her, she says, I don't want to go home. I want to go at Anne Marie.
Hmm.
So they called me, and I told them to bring her. So she came to my house, and all her friends and everybody was just freaking out that why did she choose to come to my house?
Right.
I don't know. But anyway, she was
You were
welcome.
safe.
Right.
You were
Yeah, I
welcome.
love
And
that.
and
Yes.
and I so Sabbath was closing, was on a Sabbath day. And Sabbath I said to her, I says, Sister Night, we're gonna pray. We're gonna close the Sabbath. And she said, okay. And I started to pray. I closed my eyes and I was praying. And it's all of a sudden it felt like my eyes were just locked. Like I couldn't open my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept praying louder and louder. And the more I prayed, I was sweating. But I could see her apartment where she lived. She lived in a mother-in-law apartment behind her kid's house. And the windows were like, it was really weird because she's got those bars over her windows. But in this vision, the windows were opening and shutting and opening and shutting. You know those movies that they make, those horror movies where the smoke's going in and
Sure.
out? And this is what I'm seeing in the vision. And the smoke's going in and out of the windows, and the windows are opening and shutting and opening and shutting. Then all of a sudden, they just shut and stopped. Then there was 4 cherubims on each corner of her house. And then after that, the sky, it just appeared and it was just flat blue, like a just flat. It didn't look like a sky, like, like it kind of looks round. It doesn't look flat when you're looking at, but it was flat. And out of the sky came a hand, and it had to be God's hand, and went straight to her chest.
Hmm.
Like he was trying to tell me, I got her.
Okay.
The next time, years later, was just recently. It never happened again, and I couldn't understand why he did that to me because I'm so sinful. I was going to get they're going to get my biopsy. They had found a tumor on my lung, and I said, God, I'm not, and I wasn't worried about it. I'm never scared about stuff. I don't know what's wrong with me. I really don't. I don't worry about stuff. Probably I worry about my grandchildren more than I worry about stuff to do with me. Anyway, I closed my eyes and I was praying about going for the procedure. And there again, God came to me again, showed me the color of the room and everything. It showed me the long bed and the round hole that you're going to go into or whatever. The exact room that I was going to go to. But the difference was I had an angel. There was an angel hovering over the room. So when I went there, the doctor wouldn't pray with me. I'm not used to doctors not praying with me. He kind of and the nurses covered for him. They said, we'll pray with you. But when I went into the room, there was a nurse. Her name was Kelsey. She was like, her voice was so soft and sweet. She says, how are you? Are you okay? I said, no, I'm not. She says, why not? I says, that doctor who's going to put his hands on me didn't want to pray with me. But I had this vision that there's going to be an angel in the room. She says, she closed the door. She didn't want him to hear. She closed the door. She came. She says, I'll pray with you. And she said the most powerful prayer. And I opened my eyes and I says, you've got to be the guardian angel that I saw in my vision. And she says, don't worry, I'm going to hold your hand through the whole procedure. Do you know her and I are really good friends now? She gave me her personal phone.
That's
number.
awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a lung navigator, but now she's what do you call it? A nurse practitioner now. Yes.
Can I interrupt for just a
Yes.
second? Because we have to fade to Pastor Richie's.
Oh,
thought.
sorry. Yes.
No, it's
But-
beautiful.
As I'm listening to you, going from filling your life with things that just continue to
Be
not grounding
disruptive.
and to be disruptive, and then to come to a place where you find a foundation that doesn't move, and you find a journey that you start a journey with God that's a day-by-day thing. When you're thinking of people that might be watching right now, as we're finishing up this portion, we're going to hear more when we come back for Q&A with you. But as we're finishing this portion up, what words of hope or encouragement would you offer to someone that might be watching, that might be on a journey like yours, where they're looking for something, they just don't know what it is?
All I can say is Never give up. Go to your Bible. Pray before you go. And ask God to bless you with discernment. Because God says when you pray and He says, knock and he shall open. He says, seek and you shall find. He says, ask and it shall be given to you. So if you do those things and really believe in your heart, He will do those things. But you see, what blocks us sometimes is we want to have our will.
Okay.
And we want to do it our way. And see, it's not our way. We got to let go and let God.
Beautiful.
We're going to ask you
I
more
love
questions
that.
about that because
That's
that sparked some
powerful.
questions in my
Yes.
head. So when we come back from Pastor Richie, if you're okay with it, we'll go a little bit deeper into that, if that's okay.
I gave my life today. I'm
One
not
day
used
at
to
a
doing this
time.
stuff.
You're doing
You're
amazing.
doing great.
One
We
day at a
love
time. I
you.
played that song today, one day at a time.
I love it.
It is one day at a time. And Pastor Richie's going
Amen.
to tell us a little bit about this. Friends,
Amen.
thank you for tuning in tonight. We're going to switch now to Pastor Richie's presentation, and then we'll come back with our guest, Anne-Marie Dunbar, and we're going to ask some more questions. So please, stay tuned.
Welcome to Unchained, Hope and Healing from Addiction. If we want to experience freedom, we've got to break through the chains holding us back. We break through denial with honesty. We break through insanity with hope and open-mindedness. We've got to break through the paralyzation with faith and action. Break through fear with courage. Break through our ego and pride with humility and learning. We've got to break through the shame and guilt with forgiveness. Today, we're going to break through weakness with persistence and practice. In recovery, people often say, don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle. And when we're recovering, it's about progress, not perfection. Matthew 7:24-27 says, everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell and the floods came and the wind blew and beat against the house and it fell and great was the fall. If we want to build a new unchained life, we have to start putting things into practice. Progress, not perfection. James 1:22 says, when you only listen and you do nothing, you're only fooling yourself. Matthew 7:24, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice. Living an unchained life takes practice. The reason many of us don't see the changes in our life, the changes in our marriage, the changes in our family that we would like to see is we're not putting things that we learn into practice. Rene Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. But it takes more than just thinking. It takes doing. We can know something mentally, and that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to live that out in our life in reality. We do not become what we repeatedly hear. We become what we repeatedly do. Recovery works when we work it. 1 Corinthians 9:24-27, do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Run like you want to recover. We've got to run like we want our marriage to improve. We've got to run like we actually want to be unchained. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and I make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. Paul is saying we've got to practice what we preach. An unchanged life does not happen by accident. An athlete doesn't become an all-star by sitting in a classroom. No, by putting it into practice. It takes hard work. The word athlete, you know what it means? it means to struggle. It's a struggle to live a new life. It's a struggle to break old habits. It's a struggle to do what you should do when it's not what you want to do. It's a struggle to forgive people sometimes. But every time we put these breakthroughs into practice instead of old behaviors, we grow stronger, happier, healthier, and more free. But it's going to take practice. It's progress, not perfection. Think of how much time you have put into practicing your addiction. Think of how much time we've put into practicing our habit or maybe our hang-up or our heartache. Think of the amount of time that we have put into living our old life. I mean, some of us have practiced our whole life being negative. That's not going to change overnight. Some of us have practiced our whole life getting angry at the drop of a hat. That's not going to change overnight. You can't give up after the first time you mess up. You've got to keep getting up. Persistence, perseverance, practice. You know, practice requires patience. My sponsor used to always say, be careful what you pray for. Whenever I pray for patience, God sends a traffic jam. You know, we've got to learn to practice these principles in all our affairs. If we don't use them, we lose them. Practice takes patience. We didn't become addicted overnight. We didn't become angry overnight. We didn't become controlling overnight. Recovery is not a one-time event. Living an unchained life isn't a one-time thing. It's a daily recommitment. Every day we decide to live a life happy, joyous, and free. In 1 Timothy 4, 7 through 8, in the Message, it says, exercise daily in God. No spiritual flabbiness, please. Workouts in the gymnasium are useful, but a disciplined life in God is far more, making you fit both today and forever. And this is the thing, if you're going to start practicing, you've got to start practicing before the crisis comes. If you wait until you need something before putting into practice, you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to be in trouble. If you wait until the storm comes before building a good foundation, it'll never be able to stand. Why does it seem we always have to wait until our life falls apart before we're willing to do something about it? I always had to do things the hard way. But before I treasured the things that really mattered, I had to lose everything else. Why do we always have to wait until our life is falling apart before we're willing to do what we should have been doing all along? This character, Jonah in the Bible, has to get swallowed by a whale before he's willing to start listening. Samson, he waits until he's bald and blind. Peter waits until he's denied and deserted. And that's why we've got to start practicing right now. We can't wait until we need it before we start practicing it. We got to practice it now. Don't wait until you have a heart attack before you start doing something about the way you're living. Don't wait until you're researching divorce attorneys before you start researching marriage counselors. Don't wait until you get the diagnosis with lung cancer before you say, you know what, I need to start trying to quit smoking. Start practicing right now. Man, of all the things God unchained me from, smoking was one of the hardest. I mean, every addiction is hard. Every bad behavior is hard. Every habit is hard. But man, smoking was one of the hardest because you see, I had put a lot of practice into smoking. When I got up in the morning, it was the first thing that I did. Before I went to bed, it was the last thing that I did. I smoked after every meal. I mean, it integrates and infiltrates our lives. I practiced smoking a lot. Well, I'm going to have to put some practice into quitting smoking a lot as well. It's simple, but it's not always easy. We've got to put things into practice before the crisis comes. In Matthew 7:25, it said it rained hard, the floods came and the winds blew and hit that house, but it did not fall because it was built. Notice it's past tense. The wise man built his house before the storm came. You got to build a foundation of an unchained life before the problems come, before the crisis and the storm comes, because it's coming. It's easy to not use dope when life is going good. It's easy to be nice when you like someone. It's easy to be faithful in a relationship when you're getting along. If you wait until the storm comes before you start working and practicing, it's going to be too late. Begin building an unchained life right now. These principles have to go from our heads to our heart. We've got to go to the core of the problem. A good life requires a good foundation. We have to dig down deep. Any good structure has a good foundation where they dug down deep. The part of the house that matters most is the part you can't see. The surface is never as important as the foundation, which is interesting to me because it seems like the surface is the only thing we really care about. We tend to focus on the surface, but God, He focuses on what's below. In Matthew 23:25, it says, "You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they're full of greed and self-indulgence." You see, God always goes below. 1 Samuel 16:7, "For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." Now, I'm not saying the surface isn't significant. I'm just saying it doesn't matter as much as we make it. It's much better to have a good foundation. What matters most in any structure, including life, is what's below the surface. What's going on where people can't see. What's going on in your foundation? Luke 6:46-48, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I tell you? Everyone who comes to me and hears my words and does them, I'll show you what he's like. He's like a man building a house who dug deep." The wise builder didn't stop digging until he hit something strong enough to build his life on. There's only one person strong enough to sustain you. There's only one person stable enough to sustain your marriage. There's only one person righteous enough. Don't stop digging until you hit the bottom. Dig past the dysfunction. Dig past the depression. Dig past the present dilemma. Don't let these things hold you back. Keep digging past the problems, past the pain, all the way until you hit something hard that can hold you up. Man, in early recovery, I had messed up so many times. I had relapsed so many times, been to treatment in and out of jails, that when I was finally made it to recovery, I was afraid that I was going to relapse again. And you always hear that famous, we've talked about it in this series, hitting bottom. And I had heard that so many times growing up, and so I went up to my sponsor and I asked him, because I was afraid I was going to relapse and go back out there. And I said, "How do I know when I hit my bottom?" And I'll never forget what he told me. He said, "Richie, your bottom happens when you put down the shovel." When I finally hit something solid enough to build my life on, I stopped digging. God was the rock at the bottom of my barrel. What are you building your life on? If it's a career, you can lose it. If it's a relationship, you can lose it. If it's your money, you can lose it. If it's your youth, I hate to break it to you, you're going to lose it. We've got to build our lives on something we can't lose. To live an unchained life, we've got to build our life on something bigger and stronger and firmer. Which is why I've discovered that sometimes God allows the crisis to come. Sometimes God's got to allow the storm to come in order to show you what you've built your life on. In Hebrews 12:27, it says, "All of creation will be shaken and removed so that only unshakable things will remain." God loves you too much not to shake you. He's got to shake all the fake friends out of your life. He's got to shake all the dysfunctional thinking out of your life. He's got to keep on shaking so that when all is said and done, the only thing we depend on is something that we can never lose. Ecclesiastes 3:1, it says, "For everything there is a season, a time to break down and a time to build up." There are some things in your life, there are some people in your life, there are some ways of doing things, some stinking thinking that you need to let God dig out from the root. Let Jesus dig down to the root and dig it out. You see, before there can be transformation, there must first be excavation. God always breaks us down before he builds. He loves us too much to let us build our life on something that cannot sustain our life. And this goes for everybody. All of us try to build our lives on something other than God, and it will always fall short. But if you build your life on God, you can have the confidence that he can hold you up. You can have the confidence that if God's breaking it up, it's only so he can give you something better. And so here in this parable that Jesus tells, we've got two builders. They go through the same storm and they're working on the same project and both have access to the same tools. From the outside, they look exactly the same, but one is a fool and one is wise. The way they respond to the storm is totally different. The fool falls apart, but the wise builder stands firm. Because the wise man built his life upon the rock. A rock is something solid. A rock doesn't change. It's concrete. It's in stone. Everything else changes. But God, the solid rock, doesn't change. In Matthew 16:18, it says, "Upon this rock I will build my church, and the powers of hell can't even conquer it." When the wise man saw the storm coming, he doesn't panic. What does he do? He praises God in the storm. Let me tell you, if God is your foundation, you'll be able to praise God in the storm too. Your life won't fall apart the second something goes wrong. Yeah, the enemy, your addiction, may try to knock your house down. But if you built your house on God, he will not prevail. Matthew 16:18, the gates of hell shall not prevail against your house. You see, Jesus dug his way down from heaven, all the way to Calvary. And he went all the way to the root of our problem, which is our brokenness. It's that hunger inside of us that keeps looking for satisfaction and love in all the wrong places. He went all the way to the root of our problem in order to give you something that you can build your life on today, right now. It's all about progress, not perfection. Jesus is the only perfect person who's ever lived. Trust in him. You don't have to do everything perfectly because he did everything perfectly. Trust in him. Build your life on him and start living an unchained life today.
Well, friends, Pastor Richie, he really cuts to the core, doesn't he? Especially when he talks about how the builder doesn't stop digging until they've cleared away everything that wouldn't be supporting the structure and reaches the foundation that you can build something on.
Yeah, I love that point that you have to have excavation before transformation.
Absolutely.
It's powerful, and you experienced that in your life, Anne-Marie.
And
It's
if,
amazing.
so sorry.
No, good.
If you're just joining us, our guest tonight is Anne-Marie Dunbar, and she has been talking to us about her journey, Trinidad to Canada, Canada to US, US to Canada, back to the US, because that's where we are now, so that happened. But a journey of searching, a journey of finding. And that's part of what we're sharing with you tonight, how she has found a sure foundation. So we want to come back to that in the Q&A that we have. Let's summarize some of that first part of tonight. Ultimately, what was your sure foundation?
It was the only one thing,
Okay,
and it was God.
all right.
When I got to that place, but you know, I have to tell you, the enemy, and I'm going to tell you all, anybody who's struggling, the enemy is very powerful. And if he's attacking you, that must mean you're on the right path. Or somebody who's praying for you is on the right path. Because there were many prayers that went for me that I didn't know people were praying for me. But they must have been powerful prayers. Else I wouldn't have been where I am today. And if you are trying to find that hope, that place, don't give up. Don't give up. Prayer is the only answer. I mean, it might sound corny to people. It might say, oh, well, I pray all the time. But there's prayers and then there's prayers. There's a different kind of prayer. There's a prayer. There's praying with your heart when you're all in. When you're all in, God knows you're all in with Him, and He's going to answer those prayers. He's going to honor those prayers. But you can't pray and then take it back. I've learned that lesson. I've learned that lesson where, you know, we pray and then we want to fix it. So God is saying, well, hey, you want to fix this, I'm going to let you try.
Sure.
So it sounds like, you know, even when you're talking about prayer, it's like that prayer of surrender. And so it's
Yes.
that daily surrender, that daily praying, you know,
It's
as
an
part of.
ongoing process. I mean, I'm not even close to where I feel like I need to be, but I know I'm on that road, that road to Damascus, that road that Paul, who was Saul, and torturing all
He had a
God's
past.
people. Yeah. Oh no! Don't say that.
Right.
Pastor. What? He had
But
a
he
past?
makes a turn.
Did you have a past?
That's right.
Did
I had a
Pastor
past.
Richie had a past?
That's right.
Oh my!
A bunch of broken people on a broken journey.
Was that not in the boat when the disciples were in there with Jesus? And
That's
I
the
thought I
difficult
was
thing.
there.
Right.
and
We're
I
not the
knew I'm
only
still
one.
there.
Yes, and we're not the only
And I'm
one.
trying to tell you out there
Hmm.
that you're out there too, but you're not alone.
That's right.
Amen.
Because all of us are in the same boat. That's what we need to do. We need to and see, love is the most, and see, that's the key to everything, is that love,
Beautiful.
that unconditional love that God gives us. That's the kind of love I pray to Him every day. I have a friend, Barbara. I love her to death. You know, she was just very unsure of our friendship, and I've worked and worked with God to secure that friendship for 6 years. You know, and guess what? You weren't there, but I invited her to come to church. I've been inviting her for 6 years, and it had nothing to do with church. It had to do with the fact that she wanted to be my friend. That
Right.
unconditional love, that love that you can't get that love for nobody else but God, and He's the one that's. We've got a pattern our lives.
You're saying something without saying it, though, too. You're saying that you only get it from God, but then I hear you saying you're not just keeping it, you're passing it.
No, you've got to share. You've got to share. Like if I might have $1 today, and Pastor Richie came along and says, "Oh, I needed to go down the road to get so and so." I said, "Here's a dime." And then somebody else might come along and say, "Well, I need to." My grandson, as he just said to me tonight, he says, I says, "Well, you've got to stop spending your money like that and whatnot." He says, "Well, when you stop doing that, Grandma, to fix everything, I'll stop doing that." And I thought, oh my God. But for some reason, I feel like, because I do it with love, I don't do it with any other intention, that, I don't know, some people know the story about the widow when she goes to her barrel.
Right.
It's never empty. And
Right.
just when my barrel is just about to get low,
He fills it back up.
So He's truly become your foundation, and not
Yes.
just your foundation where you can trust Him with your
Yes,
past, with
everything.
your present, and your future.
I'm not afraid of anybody knowing anything about my past. You know why? Because guess what? He told me He's got my back. He's got the bully on that playground. When that bully comes and says, "I want your lunchbox. And I want all your money you got because you can't pass by here." I'm passing by. My grandchildren says, "So what do you think? You're going to go by a bunch of gangsters and stuff like that, and you're going to walk through and say, 'Oh, I'm going to pray for you'?" I said, "Well, the thing about it is," and this is the story I just gave one of them the other day. I said, "The thing about it is that I am not afraid, because I'm at that point with the Lord. I'm not totally there yet, but if I were to lose my life, I know that I'm at that point where I trust Him, that I trust the promises that He said He has another place for me to go to. and this is temporary. So do you think I'm afraid? I'm not afraid. And that's the amazing part about this journey, is not being afraid. When you hold on to God, not being afraid, then your fear goes away, and then your journey gets better and better every day. You can put one foot in front of each other every day because you're just not afraid.
So you're no longer afraid of what other people think. You're no longer afraid of the
No,
rejection or feelings of
no,
abandonment.
no.
Because you have that foundation and that belonging with God, and you've seen that heart of God, and now you have a whole nother foundation.
My mother,
Hmm.
I know that God says if we don't love those who, we can't hold on to hurt, and we can't hold on to pain. We cannot hold on to grudges and expect to live in an unfearful lifestyle.
Right.
You have to forgive and you have to let go. And if you can't do that, you're always going to be worried. You're always going to be stressed out. I'm not saying that I don't get stressed sometimes about issues sometimes that pops up that I feel like I don't have control. But the minute after I deal with that stress, like people say to me, "Oh, you're so strong, you're so brave." I don't see it.
Hmm.
I don't see it. But yet, when I think back to it, I'm not panicking. I'm not worrying
Right.
because I know at the end of the tunnel, there's going to be some light.
Yeah.
Because my prayers are not in vain. It might not be answered when I wanted to be answered,
Right.
but He said, "Be still and know that I'm God." And that's what I've done, and I've proven it many times in situations. Even with my citizenship here, I was still. I went to the mountains. I fasted and prayed with the same family I told you about. And I would go there, and they could witness to that. We'd be there for a whole week, and I would fast and pray for 3 days. No food, no TV, no nothing.
Just you and God.
It was the mountains. Oh my gosh! And it was a closed-in porch, and I would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and all you could hear is the birds chirping, and me and my Bible with my cup of herb tea,
Beautiful.
and just chilling out, just rapping with him,
Amen.
just talking and crying, like you're sitting right here. Sometimes I sit in my living room, I look in one corner, and I cry and I talk to him, and I said, "Listen, why?" And I'm wrenching,
Right.
but I know He's there,
Mm.
and you've got to reach there. If you can't reach there, you're gonna lose yourself. You're gonna lose yourself. You're gonna be fearful all the time. You're gonna feel like you're out of control, like nothing. What's the word you used before? Controlled.
Like surrender?
Yeah, no, it was something controlled mayhem or whatever.
Controlled
Something like
chaos.
chaos. Thank you, thank you.
We
Yeah.
were talking about what was happening on the
Yes,
set before we
yes,
started
yes,
tonight.
yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
amazing.
yes. That's where I was thinking it
Right?
from you. Yes, but I tell you what, um, this journey with God, the devil is not going to make it an easy journey. And anyone who thinks that, well, where's God? Don't think He's not around. We all have to have character building process. All the things that trials and tribulations we go through. Right now, I'm going through a lot, which I'm not going to be privy to expose at the moment, but I'm going through a lot of trials and tribulations with family members, things that are happening,
That's right.
etc., that are very toxic, to say the least. And yet, it's building my character. I see where God has thrown me in the furnace, but He threw Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego in the furnace, and He
Right.
got it right in there with them.
Right?
And I'm not going to be singed because I'm not going to let them do that.
Can I follow that?
Yes.
And we'll wrap up the segment tonight
Yes.
with your answer. As you're experiencing, hey, life isn't easy, and there are things coming at me, and we have viewers who are out there who are watching, who are saying, I identify with her experience. What kind of words of hope or encouragement could you offer to them about what's on the other side of this, about that foundation you found?
Well, the only thing that I can say is you've got to develop patience.
Hmm.
That's the one thing you have to develop. And you've got to die to self.
Hmm.
Once self is involved and it's I, me, you've lost the battle.
What word? Have you replaced that word I and the word me with something else?
Yes.
What is it?
God.
Okay, it's another. It's a three-letter word. God, not the
Yeah,
two-letter word.
No,
Me.
no.
Okay.
And you know, it sounds like, oh yeah, she's just no. That's serious. My grandchildren, when I start, they go, oh, there she goes again. She's talking about God again. Oh gosh, Grandma, can't you just, you know, no, because this is real. Because I've been where you're at.
Right.
I did. You. Let me write a book.
Right.
Maybe they'll make a movie after I'm dead and gone. They'll cash in, you know.
Sure.
But I'm serious. This journey is a journey that you want to take.
With
you
God.
want to have with
With
God.
God,
Yes.
yeah. Powerful.
With who else? Let him hold your hand, even if you can't feel it. Let
Right.
him hold your hand and understand that he is truly. Try him. He says, try me.
Right.
When you go out to eat in a restaurant, don't you try the food to know
What's
whether you're
it
going
like?
to come back again?
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
and see.
And
know.
you apparently have found that you've tried him, and
Yes.
it was worth returning
Oh
to.
my goodness, yes. So many things. If I
Hmm.
journal, if I'm writing a book. So in my notes in my phone, every time I think about something, I've got like a million pages of little pieces in there. So I have another friend, Barbara, who helps me with and I want to pray for her tonight. She has cancer. She also helps me with my paperwork
Hmm.
because I'm not very good on the computer.
Sure.
And I'm being yelled by my other friend, Barbara, that, listen, you've got to get this because somebody's not going to be able to do your work and you won't get a paycheck. And I'm going, okay, I'll do it. But it's all a journey and we all have to put our hands in each other's hands. And we have to be still and let go and let God.
Can we
Amen.
pause there?
Yes.
Friends, that encouragement to let go and let God. Now, maybe you're still trying that one out, but we would hope that listening to Anne Marie's account tonight, you would find hope the same place she found it. A foundation that doesn't move and a foundation that allows you to build day by day, step by step, going
Pastor Rick,
forward.
Pastor Joe, the only thing I have to say is, just like when you come off of when you drive a car and you come out, a brand new car, you just come out. What's in the glove compartment?
Owner's manual, I hope.
Thank you. And so that owner's manual, when you read through it, Dixie, it's from the person who's designed the car. The car tells you when to change the tire, what air pressure to have the tire in, where to put the oil, what kind of oil to put it in, what to do, et cetera, et cetera. Service your engine within so much. The reason why the manual is there is to give you longevity for that vehicle that you're spending thousands of dollars to purchase. Well, it's the same thing with God. He built this engine. This is an engine. We cannot stop without it being, if fuel it, if we stop fueling it, it's going to die.
Right.
He gave us the commandments. And in his Bible, he gave commandments. And it's not Moses' law because he wrote it in stone.
Right.
Unchangeable.
Not controlling for controlling's sake, instructive for longevity's sake.
Thank you. And in
Those
order
were your
to,
words.
Yeah, but of course. And in order to do that, you've got to follow the maker's instructions.
Let's finish with that.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, you're good.
All good. So good, and it's all good stuff. And we love you, Anne Marie. We love you.
Thank you for
I
being
love
our
you
guest
more.
tonight.
Yeah.
Thank
Friends,
you for
thank
asking.
you. You are so welcome. Friends, thank you for joining us for night 8.
Winner.
A book winner. I say I'm going to end the segment without a book winner.
Oh no!
And I'll
you
tell you
got
who would
to
be
have a book
disappointed with
winner.
me.
Well,
I know exactly who the book winner
I
is.
told people. I told people to sign up because you're gonna win
Exactly.
an amazing spiritually uplifting book.
That's
so
right.
let's do a little drum roll like Pastor Jay does.
So the winner tonight is Gloria Hume. Gloria will be in touch with you. Somebody from the team will be in touch with you to find out how to get Pastor Richie's book to you. So thank you so much for registering. Friends, again, thank you for joining us for night 8. We invite you to come back for night 9 tomorrow. We hope that you will hear such hope tonight that you'll want to join us tomorrow and hear another message, another inspiring journey that says there is hope beyond these hurts, habits, heartaches, and habits. Maybe I said habits twice, probably because we have a lot of them. Friends, thank you for joining us. God bless you, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.